An incredible twist. Zaluzhnyi burst onto the scene. A sensational comeback. A photo that exploded online is already shocking people. But the real explosion is yet to come. The general gave a prediction about the end of the war that has left even the Kremlin at a loss. A bloody December has descended upon Russia. A final catastrophe has gripped the Russian Federation. The Ukrainian armed forces are wiping out the deep rear of the Russians to ashes. These aren't just strikes, this is vengeance from which Russia will never recover. Urgent news from the front, Gerasimov in serious trouble. He's reporting victories, but Ukrainian forces broke through defenses where they thought it impossible. Russians simply weren't expecting it. Pokrovsky, Vovchansk. In the fiery meat grinder, the occupiers are being blown away like splinters under the blows of lightning-fast assaults. Moscow has exploded in scandal. Witkoff has brought Putin Trump's secret plan. In Washington, whispers are already circulating behind closed doors while the Kremlin is in turmoil. What were they really trying to hide under the guise of peace negotiations? All this and more in our upcoming report, Hotspot. An unexpected turn, Zaluzhnyi has returned. The internet has erupted, a photo, but that's not all. Shortly before that, Zaluzhnyi made a high-profile statement about how, in his opinion, the Russian-Ukrainian war will end. What message is Zaluzhnyi sending, and what is this coincidence really hiding? All the sensational details. Coming up.
Russia is trying to exhaust Ukraine and destroy it from within. And political illusions about reconciliation could end in internal conflict. This is what Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, Valery Zaluzhnyi, writes in a column for the publication Liganet. The former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, after a long period of silence and working in the foggy Albion, seems to have returned not only to the information space but has also physically come back to Ukraine. After the resignation of the head of the president's office, Andriy Yermak, and the unstable political situation, it appears that President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has played his trump card. This is the return of the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine.
There is an opportunity. For example, it is possible to quickly bring Zaluzhnyi back from London, which would immediately strengthen Ukraine's overall position. And to a large extent, Zaluzhnyi is sitting in London as an ambassador, as far as I understand, precisely for such a moment when it becomes necessary to achieve some consolidation in the face of external danger. And the external danger here lies precisely in the instability of the United States' position regarding this war.
In his recently published column for Liga.net, Zaluzhnyi notes that a quick peace would definitely mean only a crushing defeat and the loss of independence. He suggests focusing on the idea of a ceasefire. As for final peace agreements with Russia, in his opinion, they are only possible if there is a 100% security guarantee.
Such security guarantees could include Ukraine joining NATO, the deployment of nuclear weapons on Ukrainian territory, or the stationing of a large military contingent capable of countering Russia. However, this is not being discussed today. And given the technological and doctrinal unpreparedness of any NATO member country or any other country except for Russia, Ukraine and China, this issue fundamentally cannot be considered.
After Russia failed to physically conquer Ukraine ex-Glovcom, I am sure that in the Kremlin, besides the military component, they have focused on undermining Ukrainian society from within. The so-called strategy of attrition. The
strategy of attrition has its own decisive blow. And if for the enemy this means bringing the country to collapse due to military actions, political and economic situations, then what exactly is the decisive blow? In this situation, if we look back at history, the answer is obvious. It is civil war. Yes, this is precisely the decisive blow that Russia systematically seeks to achieve in implementing its strategy of attrition.
According to Zaluzhnyi, freezing the conflict along the front line is currently one of the most likely scenarios for ending the war. But the peace will be short-lived.
The intermediate stage may involve freezing hostilities along the front line, which I consider to be perhaps the most likely scenario. Whether anyone likes it or not, these are the objective realities that are taking shape both on the battlefield and in economic, social and political terms.
The return of Zaluzhnyi to Ukraine and his article is definitely a signal to Ukrainian society and the whole world that the struggle on both the diplomatic and military fronts continues and that no one will agree to Russia's terms.
A bloody December has begun in Russia. The string of disasters does not end, and key sites that the Kremlin considered untouchable are erupting in fiery explosions. The Ukrainian armed forces strike where the Russians least expect it. Our forces are hitting deep behind Russian lines, targeting the FSB and Kadyrovites. In the flames, the authorities could not hide their failure. Watch for all the details.
Russia is in flames and darkness. There's a blackout in the Moscow region, and dozens of residential buildings have been left without power.
There's just no electricity at all. Something is burning in one of the windows, and here there isn't a single one lit. In
complete darkness, Russians are sitting not for the first time. A month ago, there was a large-scale power outage in the Moscow region. Well, the good drones did a thorough job, although the occupation authorities, of course, deny it. According to...
In essence, this is a gradual disconnection of Moscow from the power supply. This won't happen today or tomorrow or even in a week. Maybe, unfortunately, not even by New Year's. But considering that Ukraine is scaling up its raids across Russian territory, just look at how many Ukrainian drones are now flying into Russia. There was nothing like this in 2022 or 2023, and not in 2024 either. And
this is already a good morning in Krasnodar Krai. Local residents are reporting explosions in two apps. The Ilsky oil refinery and one of the local ports may have been hit.
Oh, it blinked. I
Saw it. And at night, drones set fire to a fuel depot in the Oriel region.
Now even the chemicals are burning. I don't know what that is. Oh, you see, it's blazing.
And this is the standard way to start the day or end the evening in Russia. What once seemed very far away is becoming more and more realistic.
the year 2025. This is a record year for the number of drone strikes on the territory of the Russian Federation. Besides drones, missiles are also starting to hit. These include small-sized missiles like the Peklo type, as well as, for example, the long-range Neptune, the extended Neptune D. There are also Flamingo missiles.
Chechnya has also come under the crosshairs of UAVs. Local residents report that as a result of the attack, the FSB building was damaged and a unit base was also shelled. Akhmat in Gudames.
This is a certain, very significant element, indeed a powerful force element, which consistently plays its crucial role and firmly occupies its designated place within the intricate Russian hierarchy of power and influence, and not the last one either. Destruction, humiliation, devastation. This is very important for this particular direction. We will find each and every one of them. And this is a very important message, so that every Kadyrovite who came to Ukraine understands that one way or another we will find him, just like we find Russian generals, destroy them, blow them up. An ordinary Kadyrovite will simply be smeared against the wall by another drone, and will even send him a package from Nova Pochta with a piece of salo inside.
Let us recall that on the night of November 25th, Ukraine attacked the Boriv aircraft repair plant in Taganrog, which is capable of modernizing and servicing two 95 MS aircraft. As a result, the occupiers lost the ability to further operate this aviation. As a result of the strike, two aircraft, the A-60 and A-100LL, were destroyed.
Truly unique aircraft were destroyed in Taganrog, ones that Russia will never be able to produce again. Moreover, they were originally laid down back in the Soviet Union era. The A-60 was a long-term project that was supposed to be a flying laser weapon. It was meant to be a kind of threat to the American space program, but it was never brought to any kind of operational state. The destruction of this aircraft essentially puts an end to the entire aviation laser program of the Russian Federation. As of today, with the destruction of the A-100LL aircraft, Russia simply loses the ability to continue these essential testing phases, to truly create anything entirely new and innovative. Although, to be honest, the A-100, the new generation of the A-50, was already technically and technologically outdated compared to its Western counterparts.
This is just a small part of where lately UAVs have been flying in, striking military and critical infrastructure targets on Russian territory. And of course, after every attack, the Russian Ministry of Defense reports that most UAVs were shot down. But for some reason, after the phrase "all targets have been neutralized," there are dozens of videos of fires on Russian Telegram channels. The reason is obvious: poor air defense performance.
Russia has always had problems with air defense. The Soviet Union did not. The airspace was completely sealed off. The Soviet Union always had far more capabilities in this regard. As a result, Russia inherited a truly vast and expansive territory, an extensive airspace with numerous blind spots and significant gaps through which, naturally, strike assets can easily pass. In this context,
The automated control systems have already brought a blackout closer in the southern part of Russia, so Putin's capital could also soon be plunged into complete darkness.
Urgent news from the front. Gerasimov is once again boasting of victories, but the truth is shocking. The armed forces of Ukraine are tearing the Kremlin's plans to shreds. Pokrovsky, Volkansk, in flames, the occupiers are reduced to smithereens, lightning strikes destroying their positions. The earth is shaking, the Russian army is losing control. How Ukrainian defenders expose the enemy's lies and defeat them on the front lines. All details below.
On the eve of the visit by U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, the Kremlin dictator, Putin, on the first day of winter, allegedly visited one of the Russian army's command posts and announced his intention to create a security zone along the border with Ukraine in the area of responsibility of the Sever Group.
Putin doesn't know, Russians don't know where this Vovchansk is, whether Kupiansk and Vovchansk are one city or different ones, and Pokrovsk, Komsomolsk, and Krasnogvardsk. Are they the same or different? No, they don't care. Vitkov, boom. They pushed the story that now we're going to take Pokrovsk along with Kupiansk. At the meeting with the American delegation, our military came and said, here's the map, look, this is Pokrovsk, this is Kupiansk. Nope, you were lied to. He comes to Moscow and Putin tells him, sorry, brother, well, not Kupiansk, Vovchansk, but we took it.
The chief of the general staff of the occupying army, Valery Gerasimov, reported to Putin about the alleged liberation of the city of Krasnoarmysk. This is what Russians call the Ukrainian Pokrovsk and Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region. This information has already been refuted by the Ukrainian side.
We can say that Putin wants to present a victorious victory that, in reality, does not exist. Since he lied about Russian troops capturing Pokrovsk, he keeps lying all the time. As for Kupiansk, where the situation is actually unfolding not in favor of the Russian army, and this should be especially noted, there we are driving the enemy out of the city. Why did he claim that Pokrovsk was taken? Because there was yet another flag planting there under the cover of fog. Russian troops raised their flag there, took a picture of it, posted it on social media, and basically this made its way up the chain and gave Putin grounds to claim that Pokrovsk had been taken. Later, of course, the flag was taken down, but the information had already spread.
The occupiers also made a statement about an offensive in the Dnipropetrovsk region and the start of an operation to liberate Huliaipol.
In response to our reinforcement in the north, the enemy is deploying additional reserves. Obviously, the brigades they are bringing in now are the ones that were supposed to be in the second echelon to build on their success. This means their reserves are not unlimited.
According to Deep State, the Russian army has advanced in Pokrovsk and near Mirnohrad. There was also a breakthrough in Stepnohursk in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Yesterday, the head of the Russian General Staff, Gerasimov, claimed that Stepnohursk is encircled.
I get the impression that Putin is constantly being misinformed by his own generals about the situation at the front, with them sugarcoating the reality. They seize territories on credit, but then it turns out that the enemy is already launching counterattacks as they try to make reality fit their reports.
Upon returning to the Kremlin, Putin demonstratively held another meeting with the governor of the Kursk region. They discussed the resettlement of people from the border regions of the Kursk region.
This kind of disinformation, without a doubt, could be tied to Vitkova's visit. Of course, this will be fed directly into his ear. I'm very afraid that this will then make its way further to Washington and turn into yet another round of pressure on Ukraine. As if to say, you'll soon lose everything anyway. Donbass, since Putin has taken Pokrovsk in quotes, taken Kupiansk in quotes, and you will continue to lose territory. So accept the terms of the peace agreement being offered to you, because otherwise things will only get worse.
Despite the lull in the information space, actual fighting continues in the Sumy direction.
The scale of the confrontation there is smaller because the Russians have redeployed their main forces to those same Marine brigades. They need them badly near Pokrovsk and in the Konstantinivka direction. But we too have been forced to reduce the number of our own forces. In
Kherson, the Russian army is still fighting against the civilian population. There, the occupiers hunt down every unarmed person who can't escape from a drone or a KAB bomb.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Putin's shadow fleet has been shattered. Ships are falling one after another and the Black Sea has turned into a deadly trap. 2 tankers have been destroyed in just a few days. Putin is in a panic. The Kremlin's treasury is melting before our eyes and the oil empire is collapsing. Fiery footage. Watch as SBU drones catch the enemy in a trap.
It seems that the Black Sea is no longer safe for Russian vessels at all. Another tanker from the so-called Russian shadow fleet was attacked 80 miles off the coast of Turkey. The Medvolga II was on a voyage from Russia to Georgia. There were 13 crew members on board. And according to Ankara, no one was injured. According to the Turkish Ministry of Transport, the damaged but still operational Medvolga II is currently heading towards Sinop and is not requesting assistance.
The Medvolga II tanker reported that it was attacked 80 miles from our coast while en route from Russia to Georgia, carrying a cargo of sunflower oil, according to the Turkish Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure.
The 140-meter-long Medvolga II, built in 2014, sails under the Russian flag and is owned by the Srednevolskaya shipping company. Its route, Russia to Georgia, is a typical direction for transporting agricultural products and petroleum products. This means that such a vessel automatically comes under increased scrutiny from both Ukraine and international organizations that monitor possible schemes for circumventing oil sanctions. This attack became yet another link in the explosive series targeting Russia's shadow fleet. Just days ago, on the other side of the Atlantic near Dakar in Senegal, the oil tanker Mersin carrying a cargo of diesel fuel was hit by 4 external explosions. It is known that in August of this year, the vessel visited the Russian port of Taman and previously had repeatedly called at the port of Novorossiysk. Earlier, 2 other Russian tankers under sanctions, Kira and Verat, were struck in the Black Sea by maritime drones. This was part of a joint operation by the Security Service and the Naval Forces of Ukraine.
The Security Service of Ukraine continues active measures to cut off Russia's financial ability to wage war against Ukraine. Sea Baby maritime drones disabled vessels that could have transported nearly 70 million worth of oil and helped the Kremlin circumvent international sanctions, a source in the Security Service of Ukraine noted.
These vessels are also part of the so-called shadow fleet of the aggressor country used to bypass international sanctions. According to Ukrainian sources, both tankers sustained critical damage and have effectively been put out of operation.
This is Mossad's tactic. Some will sunk and the others will think twice before acting. That's exactly how it should be, I assure you. Until the same thing happens in the Baltic Sea, no one in Europe will take it seriously. I think it's very timely, by the way. It would be worth doing, for example, near the territorial waters of Poland and the Baltic states. These people definitely won't notice anything. They'll just turn a blind eye and say, someone was sailing there. No, we didn't see anything. We don't know. And so on. Ideally, ships should be sunk everywhere, if there are such technical capabilities, even in Vladivostok and all over the place, so that they understand there must be pressure. Without sinking these vessels, nothing will change. It will be unclear to everyone that things are serious. That's exactly how things should be done, so that everyone remembers once and for all, you can't mess with Ukraine.
The attacks, which took place just a few dozen nautical miles from the Turkish coast, provoked a sharp reaction from Ankara. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called these events a troubling escalation of the situation.
The war between Russia and Ukraine clearly threatens the safety of navigation in the Black Sea. On Friday, there was a troubling escalation in our exclusive economic zone when merchant ships were attacked. In particular, we cannot in any way justify these attacks, which threaten the safety of navigation, lives, and the environment in our exclusive zone.
As we can see, the Russian shadow fleet can no longer feel safe. Nowhere at all. The strikes by Ukrainian naval drones as well as high-profile attacks on tankers show that the Kremlin is losing its freedom of maneuver at sea. And every destroyed or disabled tanker is not only a financial blow to Moscow, but also a serious blow to the ego of the Russian Tsar. But that's not all. At the same time, Kyiv is striking at the rear of Mother Russia. In November, the armed forces of Ukraine attacked Russian oil refineries at least 14 times using drones. According to Bloomberg, this is a record number of strikes on Russia's strategic oil infrastructure since the start of the full-scale war.
Breaking news. Uitka blew up Moscow. Trump's special envoy flew to Putin with a secret peace plan, landing in the middle of a major scandal. This is already being whispered about behind closed doors in Washington. What was hidden behind this demonstrative meeting? What signals did the US send? And did this bring the end of the war any closer? Watch.
The Americans have visited Russia again. They were met at Vnukovo by Putin's special representative, Kirill Dmitriev. The Kremlin is preparing to push through its own version of a peace plan for Ukraine.
There is a process underway and it's a serious one. Just now, Putin said that he would inform Lukashenko about how things are going on this track. Right now, there is probably nothing more important than this. Of course, there will be many people who won't shy away from anything to disrupt this process.
The day before, Stephen Witkoff took part in a meeting between the American delegation and representatives of Ukraine in Florida.
Our primary objective is not merely to bring an end to the ongoing conflict. We also want to help Ukraine achieve enduring and robust security, ensuring that it will never again be compelled to confront another hostile invasion. The negotiations were productive, but more work is still needed.
Some progress was noted, however, no concrete agreements were reached.
We are already halfway to ensuring Ukraine's independence. Today, we made significant progress. Russia must become part of the equation for a Ukrainian settlement. To this end, Witkoff will travel to Moscow.
American journalists are speculating that this time Trump has sent an unusual team of negotiators to Russia. Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner.
While the Trump administration is hastily seeking to conclude a comprehensive peace agreement to effectively end the ongoing war in Ukraine, President Donald Trump is sending two of his most senior and top diplomats to Moscow, the capital city. These are his former business partner and his son-in-law. And neither of them has been confirmed by lawmakers, by the Senate. In the
White House, there is talk that Trump is showing he prefers personal diplomacy over bureaucracy. The US president believes that it is supposedly Witkoff and Kushner who are capable of sealing the deal. Moscow's
troops, as a rule, are proud of what they have done for the development of the capital.
Who is the negotiator on the Russian side? This was stated by...
Indeed, it was none other than Vladimir Putin himself, the president of the Russian Federation, who was directly involved in this matter, personally overseeing the critical decisions and actions that transpired. On our side from the administration, it's Medinsky. Vladimir Rostislavovich, the president's aide, has been handling this from the very beginning. Well, for these important current matters, in order to meticulously organize all of this significant work and to truly get it going effectively, I have also personally involved my trusted aide, Yuri Viktorovich Ushakov. He is in contact with the American colleagues, but he can't do all of this alone. This should be handled by the Foreign Ministry and partly by the presidential administration as well. This is a very large set of issues that need to be discussed, formalized, properly drafted, and all the details need to be settled.
The Kremlin dictator stated at the press conference that one of the key topics would be the status of Crimea and Donbass. And then he got even more excited and blurted out, "The Russian Federation is ready to go to war with Europe. We
are not going to fight with Europe. I've already said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly wants to fight us and starts, we are ready right now."
Before the negotiations at Itkov's in Moscow about the peace plan, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the issue of territories is the most difficult one.
I'll be honest, the territorial issue is the most difficult. The issue of money and reconstruction, in my opinion, I'm speaking honestly, of course, without the presence of European partners, it's not easy and it's difficult to make decisions because the money is in Europe. It seems to me that this is not very fair. And the issue of security guarantees, which is very important, specifics from the US, specifics from Europe.
According to media reports, the initial version of the plan, which consisted of 28 points, involved recognizing Ukrainian territory as belonging to Russia and the possibility of withdrawing the Ukrainian armed forces even from those parts of Donetsk region that the occupiers had not managed to capture. And in Ukraine, this has repeatedly been called unacceptable. European allies of Ukraine have also opposed such steps. This is already the 6th visit by American envoys to discuss peace. The previous visit took place at the end of summer. At that time, the meeting was held against the backdrop of an ultimatum that Donald Trump issued to the Kremlin. Disappointed by the lack of progress in resolving the war in Ukraine, the head of the White House first gave Putin 50 days, then 10 days to achieve a ceasefire.
We have agreed on serious security guarantees, which I would describe as game-changing. We never thought we would get this close to an Article 5-style protection agreement from the United States. There is also a legislative provision in the RSFSR committing not to encroach on other territories after the codification of the peace agreement. So we have reached an agreement, and that's not all.
Since then, nothing has changed except for the tightening of sanctions. Putin has decided to continue his bloody war in Ukraine. An urgent geopolitical upheaval. China is abandoning Russia harshly and without explanation. The US and Trump are now closer to Xi than to their Russian friend. Putin is finally fading into the background. Russian money and regions are holding Beijing back from making a decision that could change everything. China is already pushing Russia toward destruction, toward the abyss. So what exactly is Xi Jinping waiting for, and why hasn't he trapped Putin yet? More on this coming up.
China is betraying Russia. Yes, you heard that right. Beijing masterfully pretends to be a partner, but in reality it uses Moscow as the weak link. And
in our language, there's a phrase that has become a saying. A Russian and a Chinese are brothers forever, but
here's what's interesting. Recently, Xi spoke on the phone with Trump and stated that he supports the US peace efforts regarding the resolution of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It sounds nice in words, but what about in practice?
I think that China has sent a political signal to the United States, indicating that it is closely monitoring what is happening in terms of peaceful settlement efforts and the search for peaceful solutions to the Russia-Ukraine war. The main point of this signal should be as follows. Russia must not win this war, and Ukraine accordingly must not lose.
But here's something else. The leaders of the countries have agreed on visits, and Trump is planning to go to China as early as April.
Whether Trump will be able to reach the desired agreement with China, a trade agreement, specifically in April, for example, during a potential meeting in Beijing, is a big question. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing deeper here, especially regarding the end of the Russia-Ukraine war within these timeframes, like April 2026 or a meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump in Beijing.
But what is China doing wrong in relation to Russia? It seems like everything is fine. The thing is, China is making a lot of money off Russia. The prices of export goods supplied to Russia have increased by an average of 87%.
Relations between Russia and China have always been very complicated. And if we think they're friends, no, there's actually a good word for this. They're fellow travelers. Russia and China are fellow travelers. This benefits China, a weak Russia. A weak Putin is beneficial to China. It is advantageous for China to buy raw materials cheaply. It is advantageous for China to then sell goods to the Russian Federation at very high prices. Russia basically has no other way out anymore.
And it's not just about goods. China is gradually entering Russian regions, thereby gaining access to territories and resources.
You know, there are already examples in the Far East where small villages are already becoming a large majority of Chinese people, and there they are even participating in municipal elections.
And Russia, in turn, is beginning to become increasingly dependent on China.
Is Putin okay with this kind of relationship? Again, of course not. Of course it doesn't suit me. Because Putin, he has phantom pains for the Soviet Union. Basically, throughout his entire presidency, he has tried to restore some kind of former greatness. He calls himself the gatherer of Russian lands. But in reality, he is simply leading the Russian Federation to collapse, to complete, absolute collapse, to financial bankruptcy.
Beijing is increasingly strengthening its influence in Central Asia, while pushing Moscow into the background, which likely cannot help but worry the old man in the Kremlin.
It is necessary to unwaveringly strengthen the friendship between China and Kazakhstan, to make joint efforts to promote comprehensive cooperation and to do more to contribute to peace in the region and throughout the world, as well as the development of stability and positive energy of Chinese-Kazakh relations.
But here is the main question. What exactly is driving China? A true partnership with Russia?
our consistently close and ongoing communication truly reflects the profoundly strategic nature of the Russian-Chinese relations, which are currently operating at an absolutely unprecedentedly high and significant level.
Or is Beijing simply taking advantage of the situation and acting in its own interests?
They are not interested in the Russian Federation winning this war, because if Putin wins this war, he restores his geopolitical agency. He starts talking to all the players, for example, with the United States and China, on an equal footing, which is absolutely and strategically not aligned with China's fundamental strategic interests. Yes, this position is hidden.
China talks about friendship, but only acts when it benefits them. It profits from Russia, strengthens its own influence, and at the same time builds relations with the US. And Moscow is becoming increasingly dependent on decisions from Beijing. That's all for now. And for more hot news from the front, tune in to our next episode.